warm welcome to Nirmal Bang, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. We have with us Lakshmi Iyer, CIO Fixed Income and Head Products at Kotak Mahindra Asset Management Company joining in. Welcome to the show, Lakshmi, and a pleasure to speak to you and get your insights as always. Lakshmi, my first question coming to you over here is, clearly if you go to see bond yields across the world are surging. You talk about Australia, we're up by almost around 5 to 10 basis points. US 10-year is up. Your German bonds, France, UK, the spike that we are seeing right now, do you think, is it alarming or is it something that can be ignored?
Yeah, hi, Hiral, and thank you. I don't think it's an alarming trend because the excesses that you created during the pandemic phase, I would say that to ward off the risk of malnourishment from an economic standpoint, that seems to be unwinding. So I think it's a very natural process. You need to ensure, as a central banker, as a government, you need to ensure that you haven't pumped in too much of steroids into the system, that it actually ends up into obesity, and then you need to have a very strong round or a bout of liposuction. So this is not that kind of an alarming phase. It's a gradual unwind of the so-called unreal scenario which was created in response to the pandemic. And with vaccination obviously gaining momentum and things looking to ease out, it is but natural that some of these excesses need to be unwound.
Right. So, what's the kind of direction you're seeing globally in terms of where the fixed income market goes? Because clearly, with what's happening in terms of where the US goes as well, the yields are going berserk. You have upcoming batch of US economic data that would be out on Friday. Do you think that's something which is going to be crucial on what happens to other emerging markets like ours?
See, the data coming out from US is already portending to have a positive picture on the economy. If you see, the durable goods data was higher than expected. The unemployment rate is coming down. You're seeing retail sales pick up. So you're seeing in general, I would say some momentum which is picking up. So incrementally, I think the emerging markets will now focus on, so it's a given that the data is going to be largely on the positive side. So therefore, the emerging markets will now focus on how soon the Fed has its eagerness to unwind or taper its bond buying program. So I think that's going to be the $1 million watch point. If you see in the previous tapering, it took about 12 to 14 months to really unwind this bond buying. Is this going to happen much more rampantly? Is it going to be more of a slow brew, or is it going to be somewhere in the middle? So the expectation is sometime around November, December is when the bond taper will start happening in the US, and that could probably spill over into 6 months or 7 months of the next calendar year. And the pace will actually set the momentum for other EMs to actually follow suit. Probably then at a later date, it could be topped up with rate hikes.
Right. And overall, right now as well, if you go to see in terms of where the Indian market goes, the supply side is much stronger than the demand in the bond market. The gap has been widening between demand and supply. I mean, it was almost 3 lakh crores. We had an additional 1 lakh crore if you go to see that will be added. How much of RBI support is going to be needed for this?
If you look at the announcement of the H2, which is the second half of the financial year borrowing program, it's not really sprung any nasty surprises, Hiral. It's been fairly in line with expectation in the region of about 5 trillion rupees. And this also includes the GST cess or compensation cess that was likely to put additional pressure on the government borrowing program. So that's not really happened. It's good news on one side. Also on the demand side, we've clearly seen there is hardly any credit offtake, which means that incrementally the deposit flows and the kind of liquidity that is there in the system is also finding its way into government bonds. And lastly, if you look at the FPI or the foreign portfolio investor trend, that has also turned for the better.
Mm.
While September month is still underway, we have a couple of days more to go. This number has already crossed 11,000 crore of rupees. And this is actually going neck to, and this is the net purchases, and it's going neck to neck with equities. So I've not seen any time in the recent past that we've seen such a voracious flow of monies into fixed income by foreigners. Probably ties into the news or the story around the index inclusion, but also ties in with the fact that with world over rates, the real rates being negative, India at least is a small, I would say, oasis in the desert where the real rates are still positive in some categories.
Right. As you mentioned about bond inclusion as well, uh, one factor that everyone is talking about is that, yes, foreign funds are steadily increasing their exposure to Indian debt. And one of the reasons is the growing expectation that inclusion of India's bonds into the global indices is imminent. Now, with that, what's the kind of timelines we should be working at? What is the timeline you're looking at? Because everyone's talking about, say, early 22 is something where we will see this event happening.
So there would baby steps, there would be processes that need to be followed before the final inclusion actually happens in the index. If you look at the other EMs as a case in point, the time taken has been anywhere between 12 to 18 months. Our prep as a country has already started in the previous financial year, and therefore in FY 2023, there is a reasonably high chance, or the CY 2022, probably mid of CY 22, there's a fair chance that this index inclusion could actually consummate or see the light of the day. But investors start, preparing or planning ahead of any event, like in all the events that we've seen, and therefore this time is no exception. So there is a reasonable chance that this momentum, which has picked up with the FPI demand, could well continue, because foreigners are significantly under-owned India in comparison with other EM indices, if you were to track.
Right. So if we have to take the next 12 to 18 months into perspective, say in the short term over the inclusion goes live, what's the kind of inflow that we could expect? And do you think that quantum will be able to essentially help wipe out the demand supply mismatch that currently exists?
See, the chances are fairly high, and there are lots of research reports around this, talking about if it's a very big index where the market caps are in trillions of dollars, then the representation may be just about 1%. If you're talking about a relatively smaller index where the benchmarking is done, then the index inclusion could be in the band of 5 to 10%. So we don't have the details, but broadly, if you kind of blend all this into a jar, it looks like the annual demand could be anywhere in the range of 15 to 20 billion dollars. Now that is reasonably good size. To anchor the bond yields, especially at a time when there is generic expectation that the yields are set to rise. So we are of the same camp, but the word here is gradual, and most importantly, the orderly evolution demands that if you have multiple levers as anchors, then the passage of the accommodative to neutral and tightening, that passage will be even more smoother.
Hmm. So will adding the Indian debt securities to the global bond indices actually reduce yields, say from a 12 to 18 month perspective? And secondly, what's the kind of impact we could have, say, on gilt funds on interest rates?
So here in a rising interest rate scenario where we expect the benchmark repo rate to probably inch up starting next financial year, the incremental rate at which you can expect yields to come down, even though there is an FPI demand, may be very limited. So what I'm trying to say is, but you require a strong anchoring at a time when interest rates are rising. And I think that incremental lever of demand in the form of FPIs, to my mind, is hugely important.
Right. And overall, if you go to see Lakshmi, clearly what everyone's talking about right now is that the China's power crisis, that's something which is expected to create supply side disruption, which will then result in an uptick in commodity prices and eventually lead to inflation. That's one. Secondly, the way the bond deals are impacted in the near term, that will be dependent on how the new age tech platform companies are valued. So taking both of these scenarios into consideration, what's the impact you see? And do you think these are really relevant to take note of?
Absolutely, these are relevant, data points that need to be taken into consideration, because as a nation, our inflation is not in a high comfort zone, or it's not gone through the roof. So it is in that so-called borderline zone. If you look at the FY 2022 forecast by central banker, it's in the range of about 5.6 to 5.7. Probably in the next couple of months you will get feelers that it might undershoot those expectations, but the key is, how do you crystal ball gaze into the next year? And there FY23 assumes a lot of significance on how these shortages in China and the resultant spike or potential spike in commodity prices will feed through India, because we obviously are net importers of quite a few commodities. But here, Hiral, I would like to bring in the rupee. The rupee has, fairly been, I would say, benign or moderately behaving itself well, and that will be, I would say, a good, strong antidote to any sharp spike in any imported items, and keeping the rupee at comfort levels or in a tight range, given the comfortable foreign exchange reserves we have, could be a neutralizing factor. And of course, if you have a good monsoon, which is what we have in India, and the kharif output has been fairly comfortable, that can have a mellowing impact on agri commodities, and therefore that also neutralizes the impact. But clearly these are going to be watch points from a bond yield standpoint, because markets, where they are perched, they just require reasons. We've already seen 15 to 25 basis points uptick in yields in the last 2 to 3 trading sessions.
Right. So overall, right now, if you go to see, the government has pegged the gross GSEC borrowing in the second half of FY22 at almost around 5.03 trillion, which is 41.7% of the total. And they've kept their total gross borrowings for FY22 at the budgeted 12.05 trillion. Now, taking these numbers into consideration, what's the kind of bond deals are we expecting from here on as a journey?
If you look at just the gross borrowing number, as I said, that's not likely to exert too much of a pressure, because the calendar is very well spaced out. There is lesser supply in the 5-year segment, which is why we saw anchoring and buying in the 3 to 5-year segment, which also happens to be a foreign investor sweet spot. The key thing, I think, going forward for bond yields are going to be, what is the expectation of the terminal repo rate in FY 2023? And currently we are at 4%. If one looks at, let me give you a scenario where we're talking about 100 basis points repo rate hike in total of FY 2023, then the yield, which is currently, yield curve is steep, no doubt, but the 10-year benchmark, therefore, can it inch up higher, maybe by 20-30 basis points, and settle in close to 6.5%, though that still makes it a very steep yield curve. Still, compared to 4% and 6/4, we're at 2.25% gap. But if you look at a 5% repo rate and then compare a 6.5, the gap has clearly compressed, but eventually we could see yields heading higher. And that is going to be a bigger game driver rather than the supply slated for the second half.
Right. So with this, if the RBI continues to support the long-term yields, do you think it's going to be Operation Twist, which is likely to take precedence, say, over outright GSAP or OMO purchases?
Absolutely. The yield curve is the steepest ever that I have seen in my career. And therefore, one way to correct this is clearly Operation Twist, wherein the Reserve Bank of India buys long bonds and simultaneously makes it liquidity neutral by supplying short bonds, which are in demand right now, given the surplus liquidity. So yes, that could be a very well considered modus operandi going forward. And as early as the October to December quarter, we could see announcement on those lines.
Right. And overall, Lakshmi, I mean, a no incremental borrowing is something which will bode well for the yields. So taking that into consideration, What's the fiscal deficit expected to look like according to you?
So we are not expecting any negative surprises on the fisc as compared to what was announced in the budget. If you look at the GST collections have been fairly robust, and month on month they have been surprising. Give or take a few numbers here or there. I don't think the numbers will look radically different from what they were in the past, and things are opening up further, and obviously the movements are happening across. So therefore, it is fair to assume at the current juncture that there may not be incremental slippages. And plus, there is a good, healthy government balances even right now, and the spending is not happening in the same pace. So therefore, we would be super surprised if there is going to be a significant overshoot on the fiscal numbers than from those that were budgeted.
Right. And overall, if you go to see in terms of where the Indian market goes, the bond market is seeing signals of normalization on the back of the RBI move on the 7-day reverse repo. However, the central bank is still tight-lipped about normalization, even though the other global central banks have started sounding hawkish. What is the kind of message is this giving you?
The messaging is very clear. It is going to be a slow brew. It is not going to be a nasty, hasty jump. And I think, given where we are, given that these monetary inducements were more pandemic led or healthcare led rather than financial conditions led, it's very distinctly different from what we saw in the previous financial crisis, which was actually originated in the financial market. So I think there is no doubt in our mind, there is no doubt in the central banker's mind, not only in India, but world over, that it's going to be probably a cusp between a sprint and a marathon. I don't think there is space for for a sprint. A marathon may be too slow. So probably a hybrid, even in this case, between a sprint and a marathon could be the pace which could be desirable world over, including India.
Right. And overall, with regards to where US tapering goes, now they've kept their benchmark interest rates unchanged at record low levels of near zero, while signaling that the central bank from here on is going to begin their tapering asset purchases soon, despite the ongoing economic uncertainty. What's the kind of timelines that you are looking at right now with regards to where tapering goes? And in turn, how do you see the US yield curves?
Monthly, currently, the US is doing about $120 billion worth of bond purchases. That can get, as I said, tapered off starting November, December. But again, the word here is gradual. So, in our own estimate, even in a best case scenario, probably it would take at least 6 months to unwind this entire thing. Even the Fed officials will be mindful of the fact that the pandemic has not left the world entirely. Obviously, vaccination has to pick up globally, and US is no exception, and things have to come back to normalcy. So being mindful of that, I would rule out any disruptive taper. It's going to be more a slow and gradual rundown of this bond buying. So therefore, probably anywhere between July to September period of 2022 is when this entire thing could actually wind down to zero. That is what our base case assumption is.
Right. And very lastly, Lakshmi, with regards to the Indian rupee as well. Now you have the dollar index, which actually has hit almost a 10-month high right now. Taking that into consideration, what's the kind of journey we could see on the Indian rupee?
The biggest advantage, Hiral, we have on the rupee right now is the foreign exchange reserves. I think that's our Brahmastra. Now, every time you go into war, you don't invoke a Brahmastra. Brahmastra is kept for these exigency kind of moments. You need to see the intensity of your opponent and then attack. And I think we probably are equipped with multiple such Brahmastras with all-time high on foreign exchange reserves, not sufficient to cover over 16, 17 months of our imports, assuming there were no exports. So I think that's a beautiful situation to be in. Hence, we rule out any dramatic depreciation on the currency front. Yes, the near-term headwinds remain because the dollar has weakened strength. And if you see across EMs, you see the EM currencies under pressure. But among that, I think ruling roost, keeping it high is clearly the INR, We expect that trend to continue. And as I said, over the medium to long term, it's more towards tilted towards a stable stroke a marginal appreciation bias. But near-term headwinds obviously can play on the rupee as well. We have a lot of reserves, so I'm not really worried about the shocks on the currency the way we saw in the previous crisis.
Absolutely, and that's something which we need to rely on as well from here on. Thank you, Lakshmi, so much for joining us on the show. As always, a pleasure to speak to you, get insights, and get your contribution towards this economy as well. But thank you so much. Stay safe and speak to you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.